Medium podcast. Ooh! All right, I've expelled all of my energy.
Already.
And now we can bring it down.
It's about time.
What is this? This is episode 78. And we are shaking things up a little bit. You might notice a large orange-hatted absence that is that we feel deeply in our souls. I look forward to when he watches this back and gets a hit of that. Jason is out for this episode, for he is experimenting with other poetry nights, which is fine. It's fine. We've talked about it. We've come to a verbal agreement. He's heading out to Slam-A-Lama Ding Dong tonight. I think he's a sacrificial poet, which he was part of the team last season. Now he's a sacrificial poet for this one. Anyway, that's really not important. Point is that we are joined by two incredible... we're all co-hosts today. We're all equals here today.
Thank you very much. At least I wore a hat.
Yeah, we do have one hat. Fantastic.
Thank you.
We got Thomas. We got Ryuu. How are you?
Doing all right this evening. How are you?
I'm pretty bloody good, to be honest. Pretty bloody good, yeah.
It's one of those days.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Before we kick things off, we would like to acknowledge that we are recording here on stolen lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Here in Australia, sovereignty was never ceded. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, especially in times of great chaos in the world. I think good to remember the history, the sometimes dark and awful history of the places that we live, and try and keep an eye on a brighter future, looking to the past of what has been done wrong, what we can do, what are the parts that we can all play in forging a better future for everybody. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, you guys. Welcome
Thank you very
to
much.
be to
Thank
the
you.
Vibe UN podcast. Artists. Artists get idolized. This is our topic for today. Artists get idolized as almost
You don't have to say that about me.
as prophets and gods.
I wish.
Some, not all of us, unfortunately. We are perhaps at the lower end of the ladder of the fame ladder.
We're still climbing.
gosh,
We're still
no,
climbing.
We're heading up.
I would posit perhaps that it is not the artists which get idolized, but the product in the system in which we currently exist.
Yes, I think that's
Because
kind of the topic. Well, for like a very well put, just very well put.
I try to be articulate, and I felt that it was an appropriate segue.
I think
loved
you're
it.
already doing better than we've ever done as hosts in articulating our points. The product, though, is the product not the in the eyes of the public is the person creating the art. Not in all cases, perhaps in some cases like Banksy, who likes to try and be anonymous, but
Yeah.
on the far end of the spectrum of people who are very their personality, their very being is put front and center as almost part of the art, is someone like we already mentioned in our previous chat prior to cameras rolling, was Kanye West is someone who is just like their being is so inherently tied into their artwork.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, even when you're talking about being, I think you can go as far as, well, first it was Paris Hilton, and then it was Kim Kardashian and stuff. It's
I
just
think
so,
you
like,
should go back further if you wanted to tie artists into their being. We would have individuals like Goudier, Charles Goudier, who was the famous fetishist artist of the 1930s. He did photography of women in kink gear, which was illegal at the time. But he was often referred to as the G-string king for his worship of the heel, and taking photographs of women in high heels. And at the time, he was heavily denounced because he was so anti-Protestant. But he believed in the free love movement, which was quite popular at the time, and as a believer of that movement and presently as an artist, he's celebrated for what he did in terms of setting up the stage for artists and art liberation moving forward. So I like as somebody who enjoys art history, I find that that's really good to kind of touch base on and recognize that this has been something that's been ongoing for longer than any of us are.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and I mean that's fascinating. I love that because I do love art history, but I am just terrible at history and school in general. But
I just like pictures of pretty women, and Goodyear had a really good exhibit at the Sex Museum in New York, so I was just like, ooh.
Do you think? I'm sure it's a phenomenon that has existed forever. The count. So I agree that like the tying of the artist to the art has existed forever. I'm sure as art has existed forever. But then I feel like now there is quite a strong. This is not like recent, but like just from the kind of the age of the internet has given the chance for people to pick apart individuals, for the masses, for society to kind of pick apart individuals and turn over their stones and find what's kind of hidden, what's in their darker recesses, and use that as quote unquote, and I'm not condoning like this either way really, but like they go quote unquote canceling people.
I think that that's actually quite nice though, because if you think about it in that context, the information age that the internet has provided us with is enabling us to learn more about the artist beyond their art. And previously, historically, for an artist to be condemned for their behavior beyond their artistic pursuits, they had to be local. And outside of their locale, they would only be known for their creation and their creative outputs. But even back then, as presently, artists are more than artists' product, whatever it is artists produce in terms of artwork, they are putting themselves into it. And I think it's important that we don't separate those things, their behavior from the art, because it would be disingenuous to their legacy, for better or worse. Obviously, with the internet age, the age and information age, it's much more noticeable when it's worse. We use examples of people like Kanye, or when I was growing up, the big one was Michael Jackson, who I still regard as one of the greatest dancers who ever lived, and probably one of the best musicians who ever lived. And yet, on top of that, there were heaps and heaps of allegations with regards to I don't know what we're allowed to say on air, but
it doesn't matter. We're not monetizing this.
But
YouTube, doesn't matter.
Child sex abuse.
Yeah.
So and that sort of predation was awful, and but it is a part of his legacy, and I think it's important that we make sure that those two things are linked.
I 100% agree. I feel like there is a call for like I think it's particular kinds of people. I'm trying to think if I can paint a good enough portrait. I'm not going to do it. But a call for like, just separate. Just ignore. Don't worry about the person. Worry about the art. The art is still just important. And I feel like there's a lot of people who still like. I'm a huge Kanye fan of Kanye's work, his music. Prior to play the last 2-3 albums, I think are garbage. But
no, there's no doubt he's talented. Yeah, absolutely, incredibly skilled in that regard.
I struggle to listen to it now. I can go back and I still like,
There's a reason why he made it this far.
Yeah,
there's a reason why he's an icon.
Yeah, but so my question is, okay, so Michael Jackson. I guess when I kind of learned about the darker side of Michael Jackson, I didn't already listen to Michael Jackson. I didn't really give a shit about the dancing or the cultural icon that he was. So I was like, whoop, oh well, that's someone I'm not going to go out my way to listen to now.
There's just a guy.
He's just a guy.
Yeah.
But then, how do you feel? Potentially at one point idolizing? Would you say before you knew that kind of stuff, or even not idolizing, but appreciating the work? Does it now change how you feel listening back to it?
If you believe it.
Well,
yeah, if you believe it, that's true.
Well, regardless of whether the allegations and accusations were true or not, the harm it caused was real. And I believe that was real, that the harm it caused was real.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether the actions were, and I'm not going to speculate on that because it's not my place to, and I don't know. I'm not an expert.
You weren't there?
But yeah, I wasn't there. I don't know. All I know is that there were these allegations, and then the court said, "Nah, it didn't happen." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that could be. That couldn't. That anyway." The first thing that you mentioned was with regards to idolization. Now, I think it's really important that, as a society, we avoid idolization, but that is very difficult to do in the first place.
Yeah.
Due to the ever capitalist nature of the art industry, which allows individuals to collaboratively pool together their resources to produce an end product for an artist, where an artist may have had minimal input on it individually. The product is still in itself art, and as a collaboration, we can be critical of the collaborative effort or of the individuals who partook of that. Kevin Spacey's behavior is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we avoid idolizing to prevent that sort of situation from happening, where we have an individual who may be put on a pedestal, like Kevin Spacey was by many people, but we do not wish to take away from the other artists which collaborated in those sorts of products which we have received. So
Yeah,
that's just to talk on the idolization aspect, you know? So when it comes
really
to
tough.
Yeah, well, that's why it requires us as people individually to be as critical as we can. And the ability to be critical of that is simply going to be a matter of one's personal investment in it. As a person who worked as a critic for many years of the comic books industry, I had the lovely opportunity to interview heaps of writers, artists, and publishers within the industry just for my work, and I loved it. But it required me to be critical of that particular industry. I could not provide the same level of critique to, say, traditional or classical art because I don't know much about it. You know, but I can. But you know, I'm smart enough to know to listen to other critics to say if they say that this guy did this and it's XYZ because ABC, I'm going to take it on board as best as I'm able to if I develop an interest for it. And I think that's why it's important to have a critical mind in regards to that when approaching art. It's helpful, especially when approaching art that you enjoy. Sorry.
No, please.
I could ramble about this for hours. This is you happened to pick a subject which I'm very passionate about.
Fantastic.
We'll put our mics down and you can
Yeah.
go.
A podcast is a place for a ramble.
But I was going to focus on that phrase, the best as I can, because it's a topic where why it's an important topic is because it really splits your head and your heart. It's
do you think that that's a bad thing?
No.
I think it's a great thing.
I'm not saying that necessarily, but it can be hard.
Oh,
That's the problem. Is it's hard. It's which way to turn is the issue.
Do you find that the difficulty of that reduces or expands on your appreciation of the art? For myself, I would say that it expands upon my appreciation for the art as a whole. By having a more critical knowledge of it, I can look at the art and say, I appreciate this more because I know that the person who made it was objectively a good person or a bad person. Because I can look at this and I say, I know more about this, and I'm grateful that I know more.
It actually gives you a lens to look through as well.
Yeah.
If you know those darker parts of the person, then it actually gives you a bit of a framework to kind of reanalyze what you've previously taken in and go, oh, okay, interesting. That this person can do this and also do these potentially fucked up things.
Yeah.
I saw on
People are capable of all sorts of things.
yeah. I saw a post on Facebook of all places today, and I feel like Facebook now is just all the older people that I grew up with in my home country town and kind of their takes on a lot of music and stuff like this, and a lot of it's just I wish people would keep their politics out of music and stuff like that, you know? I wish people would stop sampling music. I wish people would pick up an instrument and learn how to fucking play.
Music is art, and art is inherently political.
That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah, it's a shame that somebody would feel that way, you know? I ask them to pick up any newspaper clipping from the last century, you know? Art has always been political.
Of course.
And music is no exception.
This particular one was someone like saying to a punk band, I wish you would just keep your politics out of your music, but I guess that was too difficult. And the punk band responded with, oh my god, I can't believe a punk band would get political, you fucking idiot, basically.
Yeah, that might be the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
But it got me thinking.
God Save the Queen was.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
It got me thinking. And look, also to be fair, that could have been a fucking. It's hard to communicate sarcasm through the internet at times, so who knows? But it got me thinking of like, and this is perhaps not giving people enough credit, but is it people who just struggle to accept that the world is fucked up, that there are darker parts? It's because they want things to be good and bad. They want the world to be, we're the good guys, there's the bad guys over there. I like good guys, I don't listen to bad guys, rather than accept the fact that like, oh, this artist that I like or the country that I live in has done fucked up shit.
Here, there's shades of gray with it. And I think that that's a valid way to approach it. I especially think it's helpful to look at it from the perspective of when people tend to say that, what they're actually saying, perhaps a bit poorly, is that it's frustrating to them that someone who they have invested time and energy into, that they have a love for, it's hard for them to look at them from a new lens. You know, and I can appreciate that. You know, I loved Woody Allen films when I was a kid, and then I learned more about them when I got older, and I can't stomach those films anymore, and that's disappointing. You know, but
it feels like you've lost something.
I have, but I've also gained something. You know, and I've gained perspective, and I feel that that's helpful.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Also, it forces me out of my bubble to find new and better art. Like, the number of people, the number of people, for example, when J.K. Rowling outed herself as a massive,
that was definitely something I wanted to bring
turf.
up.
Yeah. Oh no, I'll just jump right into it.
Let's
you know, she. Oh my god, just unbelievable. And what was worse for it still for me personally was the number of writers who openly publicized their bile after she did. Like a lesser known writer was Orson Scott Card, who around the same time that Rowling made it known that she was this way, Orson Scott Card was a sci-fi writer who created the Ender's Game series, which was quite popular around the same time. He was a local author in my state, so I was actually really familiar with him and had the luxury of, well, at the time I thought it was a luxury of having met them when I was younger and at a local book signing.
Did Ender's get turned into a film as well?
Ender's Game did get turned into a film.
Which is fair enough.
Yeah.
You met him thinking they were great.
Yep.
Suddenly,
all that happened. And, you know, yeah, exactly. And it was one of those situations where, for me, it was just like, I am so horribly disappointed in this writer as a person. But then when I took that knowledge of what I knew about them as a person and applied that knowledge to their works critically, I could see how their personal views affected their writing. Much in the same way that people, upon reanalysis of J.K. Rowling's works, when they look at what she wrote, they can look at this and say, actually, yeah, this is a bit messed up, and 100%. We didn't really think critically about this before. But the upside to that is that we have tons of people producing much better stories, and there are far more authors that people will look into and investigate because they can recognize that, hey, you know what? Maybe we overhyped this a little bit. We weren't being very critical. Let's take a step back and look at this more critically than we did.
It's almost sneaky in the first place, but I think you're dead right. It creates a model. It's so successful. It creates a model for someone more talented and understanding to create something new.
This is the
That's
flaw
more
created by
positive.
putting them on the pedestal in the first place.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there is an opportunity to
Absolutely.
be better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Be better.
JK and all the other authors who are watching this, please try a little bit fucking harder.
Fuck turfs. Y'all be better.
yeah.
Jesus. Oh, my God.
And be less pretentious about it than JK as well. My God, though. Then also, I do enjoy Trainwreck. Like, if you're gonna be a terrible person, be so public about it that we can all go, "You're a piece of shit. Get the fuck out of here," rather than being really kind of sneaky about it.
Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen's a great example. Actually, that was exactly what I was thinking. Oh, my God. Same wavelength. Charlie Sheen was very open about it. Tom Cruise similarly. But we have to be very mindful about that because the Scientologists will come and hunt us in our sleep.
Oh yeah, and they've got all the money.
Oh, my God. Sorry.
No, you're- well, I was going to say, what is your opinion then on the idea of, because taking something like, all right, so you find out an artist is quote unquote a bad person, whatever. They've
Objectively
done some bad things. Shit.
Yeah.
But they've made an album, right?
Yep.
Or something like that,
Yep.
Now that's something that can't really get, you don't get a sequel, or you don't get like a new, there's not a universe necessarily. There could be, but generally speaking, there's not a universe that has been created. With J.K. Rowling, they've made an entire world that millions and millions of people around the world have enjoyed and immersed themselves in. And now, with new games and new media just in general created in that universe, they are adding in things like trans characters. There's a bit of course correction. With JK not involved at all.
Yeah.
What are our thoughts on...
Smarter heads have prevailed, I think.
I personally won't consume anything adjacent to her until I know she's not making a cent off of it.
Yeah.
But that is a personal ethos, and I harbor no ill will or judgment towards anyone who decides not to abide by that. I think that you could do better. There are way better games, universes, stories out there. Go make your own.
Watch some gameplay.
But if
of
somebody,
the Harry Potter game that looks like shite.
and look, you can do so much better.
Yeah.
But that, and that side, it's like, look, if somebody really wants to spend their time on this, that's your prerogative. I'm not going to judge somebody for, having that personal investment. I'm going to judge you for giving the money.
So pirate the game?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
And then
please
it's all sweet.
steal,
Yeah.
steal the
Someone
shit out of that.
Teach me how to pirate. I don't. Just to piss
Okay,
off
Boomer.
J.K. Rowling.
You know what? It's
Jeez.
actually so much easier to
stopped
pirate.
reading after the fourth book because the first movie came out when I was 12.
Yeah, sure.
Harry Potter's age. And I did not get to be Harry Potter, and the first movie was a piece of shit. So I just gave up on all of it.
Well,
Just
but no,
gave up.
Yeah, I'm all
entirely.
about. I'm all about. Something like that. I would absolutely encourage piracy of it. Honestly, because maybe I shouldn't, but I've.
Oh, fuck, no.
No, but
No, you don't
people
get
people
to
may
be
say that I
rewarded.
shouldn't, but I am going to say, look, if you worked on this project, you knew what you were getting into, and shame on you.
You don't
At
get
this
to
stage,
be
for sure.
rewarded for being a bigot.
Yeah.
That's
Because the only people who benefit from that are the oppressors.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful to anyone. So look, if you as an individual, as a young individual who has come into this and is discovering this for the first time and is finding it really, really rewarding, create your own content. Become log on to fanfic.net and write your own stuff. Like, make it as queer and anti-fascist and fucked up as possible, and then email it to J.K. Rowling directly, you know, just to piss her off. You know, do that.
Your J.K. Rowling fan fiction.
Yeah.
Of
You know.
how you murder her over and
Yeah.
over again.
Exactly.
Just
like just diverting completely away from that libertarian bullshit. Anyway,
I'm so glad that we do live in the age where this is actually a genuine option, that we can publish these kind of things and things to take off, and it's just a big middle finger to say fuck you, you're a giant piece of shit. So this
Google
is what you
zip
fucking
file hard drive crashing.
I don't know what that. I don't know. No idea.
I've been an old man since I was a young man. I say that all the time.
There's this
I
fun
do
thing
not
that kids do
understand
where you open a zip file and it causes other things to open up and it can crash your computer.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
anyway, sorry.
Thank you for explaining that.
It's really cool. It's a fucked up thing that you can do to other people's systems. It's like malicious cyber attacking. But it's like, you know what? I don't even care. I'm just like, if you're smart enough to figure that stuff out and I'm dumb enough to fall for it, then it's like, okay, that's a little on me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Actually, I agree with that.
This is a weird analogy, and I'm not doing this as like a boo-hoo artists who do fucked up shit and who have made good art, or not even this. I don't think Harry Potter's good art, but nonetheless,
Well, I would use that as an
made
example
quite
for
a bit of money.
influential art, right? Because quality is subjective.
Yeah.
But this is where we come back to putting artists on a pedestal. You have to recognize that when we put artists on a pedestal, we lose our ability to be critical of them. It's like a seesaw, right? You have your you have your critical thinking, your logic and your reasoning, and you have your emotional state. And the more emotional you are, the less critical you're able to be. Similarly, the more critical you are, the less emotional you can be. And that can be detrimental as well when you really want to be able to enjoy something.
100%.
And it's helpful to make those decisions of where you want that balance.
Obviously, with anything that applies.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that applies to anything. That's like neuroscience 101.
Yeah. But I was going to say the concept of like, I mean, for many artists, such a project, especially as big as a book series and then a franchise, is would feel like your child to a degree. You've put out this beautiful thing that you think is a beautiful thing into the world, right? And then you do some fucked up shit, and the world, society, gets to take your child and twist it to not represent your beliefs anymore. So people putting out fan fiction to completely counter JK's view on the world, I hope it stings that much worse because it's based in their child that they
used
created.
to deliberately. She used to actively like reply to people's tweets she used to actively like reply to people's tweets about that kind of stuff if they did, and whenever they came up with stuff like that, she used to be just like on the internet constantly hounding tiny individuals with, you know, no presence, no internet celebrity or whatever, just bullying individuals, and it's just so weird.
Yeah,
honestly, grow up. But back onto like music and stuff, because I feel like we've gotten a lot off topic because we could talk about her for hours.
Yeah.
Just a good example.
Yeah.
I think the short version to summarize would be that separating the art from the artist is only helpful if we view the art through a highly critical lens. Because when we generalize, it's more important to recognize that art is affected by the artist. And therefore, we need to understand and incorporate that person's legacy into their creation.
I think that's a fantastic point. I'd never thought of that. I only sort of looked at this problem from, I think it first came up when a friend of mine decided to stop filmmaking, decided to paint, and started going to TAFE. And he found out that a whole lot of examples from the books that he was having to study were by, say, slave owners, and they'd say it was like a bird that was caught by a slave to put in a cage so that they could paint it. And it was simple things like that. And I was like, but I love art.
I mean, that's
And so,
fascinating history.
yeah.
And I think that definitely like makes you appreciate where it came from a lot more.
Yeah.
And slap on the credit for your source material as like
Yeah.
whoever caught the bird. If you happen to know the name of that person, like that would be
Oh, for
dope,
sure.
right?
But it was just like, but how can you... These are the people that learnt the techniques or created the techniques to teach you how to be a better artist. So how do I...
Within that
do I-
particular case, though, as well, the mention of profit, I think, is important. Because
I actually think that also ties back to what we said about do better. When we talk about
Yeah.
that as a concept, profit aside, that gives your friend the opportunity to look at that and say, I can create something better with more holistic or wholesome source material.
Yeah, less
you see,
slaves,
he
ideally.
has wholesome material.
Yeah,
needs-
let's say in general. I feel like
just
that's
want-
like the bar is
Yeah, I was
on
gonna
the
say-
floor. At that point, it's subterranean even.
I just want to just state that Vibe Union is against slavery. I just want to make that clear. I want to put that on the table.
That's fine. Also, wholesome material. There is a portrait on my wall of
Yeah.
me naked behind a guitar in a Santa Claus hat.
Is that wholesome or some holes? Is it an
was-
acoustic guitar?
It is.
Then it's some holes.
Extra holes.
Yeah.
That's some
Extra
holes. Those are some holes.
Yeah. They're big enough. Probably
Got
shouldn't have
one,
said that.
one hole between the ears and straight to the other side. That's clearly the evidence we're laying down here.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, but you were saying profit.
I was going to say because these painters are dead.
Yeah, that's the
And
thing.
I think that actually does make a huge difference. It depends on. I guess you probably want to kind of keep an eye on like if you're consuming art of any. If you're consuming anything, where is the profit going? Because they could still be going to a. I don't know why. For some reason, it would still be going to a bunch of racists, but like you would try and keep on top of like where the profit's going. Go.
Yeah, I feel like that's the but it was another time argument.
No, yeah, but still, like, I mean, you're still analyzing the art. You're still adding that history
Yeah.
into your analyzation.
So as long
of
as
it,
you acknowledge
analysis
it.
of it.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, so there's this real. Oh my god, I love. Thank you so much for talking about that because one of my favorite mythoses is actually created by one of the worst people, which is H.P. Lovecraft.
I knew
Yeah.
immediately as you
Yeah.
said the word mythos. I was like, I know where it's going.
Yeah. No. Fuck that guy. So
Beautifully
bad. Oh
awful.
my god. Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievably awful person, right? And I've read his works. I thought it was really, really interesting and really, really creative. But God, the overt racism was like through that lens. It's just like, wow.
Whenever one of the scientists or
Okay.
explorers goes into another country, like,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Jesus.
It's so
Here we
messed up.
go.
Okay, so you've got that right.
Yeah.
We know the art, critically speaking, is objectively good. We know the artist, objectively, critically speaking, is horseshit.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, how do we consume this safely? Now, I look at this from the perspective of, well, it's public domain, baby. Nobody gets money for this shit anymore at all. Which is why I absolutely loved Jordan Peele's little mini series that he created that was Cthulhu-esque, and it was talking about the
Cannot believe I haven't seen this.
oh my gosh, it was
I
like a
love Jordan
TV
Peele.
series that he had his fingers in the pie for, and it was okay. It was
It wasn't.
I'm sorry,
it wasn't
Mr.
the.
I'm
the
sorry,
sun- it
Mr.
wasn't-
Peel, but that shit was mid.
It wasn't. It wasn't the southern, the southern themed
No, it
H.P.
was
Lovecraft series, was it?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Okay, yeah.
I actually really, I really liked what it was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like emotionally, I felt that like as a concept, taking something that was so, taking a work that was so well constructed by such a horrible person, and perversing that person's idea into something cool using that similar style of of good construction. I thought that was brilliant. Like from an artistic perspective, that's genius.
Well, that sounds like the perfect example of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and that is consciously and actively not separating the art from the artist. That is looking at the
True.
and the artist and making a conscious effort to do something with it productive and creative and constructive. And even if the outcome wasn't 10 out of 10, it was still entertaining.
Yeah.
I still watched all of it. I liked it a lot. It was fun.
And even as a concept and a response to H.P. Lovecraft as a person, just to exist at all, even if it was terrible, even to exist at all is still worth
absolutely
checking that out. And
I
understanding.
Yeah.
just quickly, I really love the use of the word safely. Safely doing these things. So
Yeah.
that was, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I think that's I think that's
the
really
really important part about it is not ignoring the history, but
no
acknowledging
because the
it
history is
and-
important.
yeah.
By the same token, I would love to see another really good example of this was Taika Waititi's movie that he made, Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
That movie.
This is another
so
great
much.
example of that, where if you want to, we're really stretching the rubber band here, but I'm going to go there because Hitler was a painter, and he was an artist, not a particularly good one, if I recall. I've seen a few of the pieces, and I was like,
I think mid is correct.
Very
there
mid.
again.
I think
But-
Izzy Ishard was
Yeah.
went. I can't paint these trees. I'm gonna go.
Izzard is
Yeah.
like, fuck it, I'm gonna
Oh,
go burn
he's-
up the world. Anyway, yeah, no.
he's brilliant.
But I really liked Taika Waititi's approach to that, because in his interviews he talked about his approach to the character of playing Hitler in that, and he said, I'm not gonna try and do his voice like all these other actors do, because he's Hitler. Fuck him. Which I loved that. Absolutely loved that
Yeah.
interview. It's like, why would I study this guy's voice? Fuck the guy. He's a dick.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is brilliant. Thank you. And it took the arguably an artist and the horribleness of the human being, and it put those things together, and it said, I'm going to make a silly gay man as Hitler. And this was like springtime for Hitler, but better. Just way better.
What a perfect
I
example.
loved JoJo.
Yeah.
Just conceptually.
I watch it. I show it to
it's so
everyone.
fun.
I make everyone watch it.
Go watch it. It's great.
Yeah, except my partner's German and does not like it.
It's a hard film to stomach, and I can appreciate that. It talks about some pretty dark and deep stuff, but it's a beautifully written story, and I think that's another example of this is art that has been creative by approaching another person through a critical lens and not separating their acts from their.
Actively tying
Yeah.
it to them.
It's actively
then,
tying those
yeah,
things
yeah,
together.
yeah.
Jordan Peele did it with that Lovecraftian series.
Lovecraft is in the
Lovecraft Country.
Lovecraft Country.
Thank you. That
He was-
Lovecraft,
yeah.
Lovecraft Country was
Feel so left out.
Peele. Lovecraft
I've not
Country was
seen it, yeah.
brilliant, but the acting was mid. I'm sorry.
I wanted to bring it back to H.P. Lovecraft because
sorry.
when I started to because I
I need another
got
season of it. It was so interesting.
I got big into the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft. I have not actually read all of the work, but I've read all the classics. and learning more about the person, H.P. Lovecraft, actually kind of painted all of it in a new light. And I was like, oh, I think this is all because you were so fucked up. And not as in like an idolization again, but rather just like you felt
morbid fascination, perhaps.
Yeah, like you felt this truly maybe the most to your core horror, at least in terms of the way it's written. I think is like probably the best example of like as existential dread. And reading up about him as a person, you were scared and sad and depressed and terrified of everything that wasn't you. You were scared of women. You were scared of people of color. You were scared of just anything that wasn't you. And I feel that in the work, which actually I find kind of gives it a new dimension and new depth to it as well.
Like I said at the start, is incorporating it helpful? And I will always argue that keeping those two things together is always helpful.
Well, yeah,
It might be, and it can be hard, as it was with your friend. But it's helpful.
I was going to come back to that. It was like I tried to say to him, is like, stick to the detail. Don't like the literal detail, not the emotional backstory. Like, stick to fine lines and how to do this.
Even
that,
if you
and the
don't,
other.
even if you do, even if you would like, would you want to incorporate the backstory? Is there a way to give homage? English. Lo siento. No sé.
I've heard homage.
Homage. Is there a way?
I've heard that before.
I've heard it both ways.
Okay. Is there a way to give? Is there a way
Homage.
to give homage to?
It sounds like a really nice dessert.
Yeah.
Right?
Ay, ya. Quisiera. Okay, but no. Is there a way to give? Is there a way to give credit to that? To give acknowledgement. That's the word. That's a better word. Is there a way to acknowledge that?
The skill.
Well, no, all of it. Through see, because that's why I was mentioning to bring it back to that, because I went into Jordan Peele as a way he has kind of segueing very tangentially, because I feel like it's really helpful to be able to acknowledge that this is where it came from. What do we do with that information and that knowledge once we know that it happened? Do we give up and say, this is rubbish, let's forget about it forever? Or do we pull a Jordan Peele and create our own Lovecraft country?
Well, I was sort of thinking that it's a kind of a nice twist of the knife to use someone's, like, they've created this horrible person has created something beautiful. I'm going to use their skills to create something better. It's almost just like a twist of the knife.
It's a twist of the knife, which gives us, it's a nice catharsis. But also,
but it's not positive.
I think it's cathartic for those who have the knowledge of the source material being bad. And I think that catharsis ultimately is helpful. Not necessarily good or bad. It's subjective is how that is. But it's helpful. And I think that's why one ought to pursue that if they can.
I think we're starting to head towards all forms of art should sort of be taught with history.
Oh, I agree. I've always believed that art should be taught with history. I don't think it helps to separate those. Like, even mathematics is taught with the lens of history. Who here did not learn about Pythagoras?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Everyone learned that story about how.
Story about the guy.
I heard the name. I thought he was a guy in the other class.
When I learned, when I had to learn geometry, and a squared plus b squared equals c squared, we had to learn as a part of learning that Pythagorean theorem, we learned the history of Pythagoras and the Egyptian individual who came up with the mathematical theory that enabled the construction of the pyramids.
You lucky.
Well,
That's sick.
that was
I did
awesome.
not get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I was
did
like-
not get that.
Look, I was in the 3rd grade, and Ms. Borman was a badass. Thank you, Ms. Borman, if you're still out there. And no, I'm not gonna buy into your pyramid scheme. Please stop messaging me on Facebook about it.
It's called the Pythagoras.
I guess you can't. You can't run away from the world. That's a pretty broad statement, but
No,
taking all of that, taking all of the
take what you can. If it's
darker
something that
sides
you
of it
love,
is
yeah, take it on.
important. It's a pretty bland statement I've made, but I stand
No,
by it.
it's
I stand by
good.
it.
It's
No.
good. You did your best, honey.
Thank you so much. And on that note,
If something
of
makes
me-
you feel good.
great, thank you so much. This has been.
feel good.
I'm just going to
I love it.
soldier
No,
on
it's good.
through. This has been the Vibe Union podcast. Continues and will always be the Vibe Union podcast. Anything you want to plug? Anything like you've got like cooking? Anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
I forgot I've got lamb in the oven.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're listening to this, when will this come out? On Monday. But nonetheless, every fucking Sunday, 12 p.m., State Library in Melbourne. Fucking join those numbers and let's put some more boots on the ground for Free Palestine. Also, my album launch is fucking... oh, no, this will be out after my album launch. In the past, go to my album launch. Listen to the album. Listen to
Go
the
back
album.
in time.
Rhath, Liminal, on Spotify, Apple Music, all those other places. I think that's fucking it. All right, bye. Vibe Union Podcast. Music by Sixpence.